Well, first of all, hi. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
No problem.
I absolutely loved your work on this show. And I wanted to ask first, do you have a background in theater or musical theater?
I do not have a background in musical theater. I do have a background in theater. That's what when I went to university, that's what I ended up getting my degree in. And it was something that was almost like a light bulb going off because I was studying English and history, and then I took a theater history course and ended up segueing into the theater department and got interested in acting, which I did, for my first couple of years in the program. But we had to take technical courses. And so one of the technical courses I took was costumes along with carpentry and props, etc. And when I was taking the costume course, the light bulb went off. And then I realized that when I had been 3 or 4 or 5, I always used to make like doll clothes and made things for myself and really liked it. But it hadn't quite clicked with me that it could actually become a career. And once I discovered that, I just, pursued it as far as I could. And initially, took pattern making courses. I learned how to make period costumes, from the 15, 16, 1700s, corsets, crinolines, underwear. But then I always loved musicals as well. So I just never had the opportunity to work on one until COVID came, coincidentally. And I had decided that I wasn't going to work in COVID, and that a lot of productions had just, shut right down. And I put myself as unavailable, but somebody just decided to call me. And I said, oh, okay, I'll read the script. And then, from there on in, I just thought I had to do it. I'd worked with SNL people before on Hot Rod. And so I knew it would be like a fun journey. And I loved the scripts. And it turned out to be the perfect antidote for what was happening while COVID was happening. So that's the long answer to your question.
No, that's
Yes,
perfect.
no, I haven't worked in musicals, but I love them.
Going off of what you were saying about this having been made during COVID, what were some of the challenges of making a show during quarantine?
The first challenge, and a primary challenge, was that a lot of the manufacturing had shut down, and it was very difficult to get fabrics. So getting fabrics in Vancouver is difficult anyway, but even major manufacturers had shut down. So the suppliers were running dry. That was a big hurdle. So in a way, we had to make do, but it involved a lot of, over dyeing fabrics and being very selective. The second challenge, which was just as great, if not greater, was because of travel restrictions, we couldn't get the actors in a timely fashion. And so we had to start making their costumes before they arrived. We couldn't go anywhere to have a fitting to get proper measurements. And a lot of people couldn't even leave their residence to go get proper measurements done. Like, everything had just shut down. So we prepared as much as we could and crossed our fingers, hoping it would work out. The beauty of it was that there weren't a lot of costume changes. So once we were set, then we were well on our way.
Speaking of that, I think it's, very interesting that, like in a lot of musicals, most of the characters sort of wear one or two costumes throughout the show. What did you sort of do to make sure that the costumes that they were going to be in the whole time then were really reflecting exactly what the audience needed to know about those characters?
Initially, I watched a lot of musicals, and what I believed and followed through on was that the characters were lumped into specific types. We had the groups of dancers, we had the biddies, we had the background people, we had, our primary actors. And I just had to make sure that they all lived in that particular world. And when somebody needed to take focus, they could take focus. And we would, understand, for instance, when you look at the dancers, you understand they are all from the same color world. And one of the first things I did was construct these very visible color palettes made of wheels of fabrics, some of which were patterned, but, they were all within a certain color range. And I got those various fabric tones approved by the director and the producers. And that was our first step in deciding, what type of character world that they were going to be in. So the biddies were dark and funereal and, darker jewel tones, and the dancers were light and, I mean, not really pastel, semi-saturated in color. But we also had to check in with the production design department to make sure that our folks weren't going to blend in with their background. And we paid a lot of attention to how that was developing and could work in synchronicity with each other. And, all the time I would go to the production designer and say, "Oh my God, your set looks so fabulous." And he'd say, "Oh my God, the costumes look so fabulous." So it really worked well together.
Absolutely. And, speaking of, you mentioned dancers, are there sort of specific challenges to designing costumes that are meant to be danced in and making sure that those people have a full range of movement?
Absolutely. And fortunately, one of my assistants is quite a well-known dancer, excuse me, not dancer, but designer
Mhm.
for ballet and dance. And so I brought her on board, and she was able to warn me of the, pitfalls that when, a dancer is twirling, they have to have more than a full circle skirt. It has to be larger than that so that, you can catch the full volume of coloration, and that their partners are able to flip them upside down. And the other thing we had to do was, because they only had one costume, we decided to make it look as if the female dancers were wearing dresses, but they were actually wearing a top and a bottom.
Mm.
And we only made one bottom, but we made two tops. So that way, if they're performing over a number of days, and, our shooting schedule was 4 months, that we would be able to clean their tops in between. With the fellows, we had to do almost the same kind of thing. We had to make sure that they would have full range of motion for their legs. So the pants were made mostly of a like extendable material, and, would have gussets like in their crotches to make sure that they could get the full extension. Yeah, and make sure their shirts stayed tucked in. So we had to make special waistbands and everything, and get them proper shoes to make sure that they were going to be comfortable when they were hoofing it all day. But it worked out really well. The dancers were very happy with everything that they wore. It was fun. It was so exciting. That's all I can say. It was so much fun to work on.
Well, it definitely was fun to watch as well. And as a former dancer myself, it was really lovely to see these costumes that felt like, these dancers had their full range of motion in them,
Mhm.
which was great. I was curious too, you mentioned you watched a lot of older musicals to kind of get the idea for what these sort of character archetypes were, but were there specific shows that you were really inspired by?
Um, I would say, well, The Music Man was a huge one for me. I hadn't seen The Music Man like since I was a kid. And I knew I was going to have to watch a lot of musicals for research. So I forced my husband to watch it with me. It was the first one I watched. And of course it brought back, all the memories, but like the scenes in it, the opening scene on the train, like was so incredible with everyone like kind of like walking and moving like that. It's like, and my husband, who hates musicals, watched it. He was just blown away by it. He was blown away. So that was definitely, one that we paid a lot of attention to. And then the character of Danny Bailey came almost right out of Carousel. And then there was Oklahoma. I just watched South Pacific because I wanted to. The Sound of Music ended up having a big part with the Baroness. So, but I almost have that movie memorized, so it didn't matter. But I would just say it was all all within a circle of reference, and it was really interesting doing the costumes, because when I first interviewed for it, I was told that the period was the 1940s. So I did a lot of research from the 1940s. But then when I started reading the script, well, this doesn't seem very 1940s. And then I asked the writer and showrunner, like Cinco, I said, well, when is this set? And he said, oh no, it's the 1910s. And I said, okay. And then, like another character, would come on board, like the Baroness from The Sound of Music. Well, she's not 1910s, like she's pre-war. And so then I just thought, okay, it's whatever suits the character. So when someone asks me what era is it, I always just say, it's the musical era. And even one of our characters, Dub Cameron, was based on a character from Gilligan's Island. So that's the 60s.
Okay,
So
I wondered if that was the reference for her.
well, it was because the writer adored, and I can't remember the character's name in Gilligan's Island. He adored that character, so that was what she was modeled on. So no, it was so much fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, just to sort of close up, what do you have coming next? And would you ever want to do a musical project like this again?
Well, I'm working on a show right now, which is wonderful. We start filming tomorrow, and it's again another type of show that I haven't worked on before. It's Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Amazing.
No, it's so great. It's
I'm very excited for that as someone who grew up reading.
Yeah, it's an 8-part series, and we have the author Rick Riordan is one of the producers. So it's going to stay true to the series, and I know the fan base is very excited about it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mythological characters and monsters and beasts and demons and all of this kind of thing. So I'm just getting, like, I've been working since January, and we start filming tomorrow. So as far as another musical, if I was going to work again, I would say I would definitely love to do one. It was so much fun. And the only thing I just want to say, to sort of quickly wrap it up, it just put everybody in such a good mood. And when you'd go on the set, and everybody would be watching the dancers, and the music would be playing in the background, and you look around, and there'd be all these big burly grips, just they're sitting on this, and they're tapping their toes, like just like that. So everyone was just filled with joy and smiles and happiness throughout the shooting. And at the end, on our last day, when the actors left, there were a lot of tears. Everyone said it was the best thing they had ever worked on. So yes, I would say if I was going to do another show, but my family made me promise not to. So I think this one will be my last, but I was thrilled to work on Schmigadoon.
Well, that's amazing. And it was also a joy to watch, especially all this lovely design that went into it.
Yeah.
So thank you so
Fantastic.
much for chatting with me today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very much looking forward to, seeing some more of your work in the future on the Percy Jackson show.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks.